What was the Battle of Bosworth? Was it a turning point in English history? The Battle of Bosworth, fought on August 22, 1485, was one of the most decisive engagements in English history, marking the conclusion of the Wars of the Roses and the beginning of the Tudor dynasty. This battle not only determined the fate of the English crown, but also symbolized the end of the medieval period and the emergence of a more centralized monarchy. The victory of Henry Tudor over King Richard III brought an end to a prolonged civil war that had ravaged England, leading to significant political, social, and cultural changes in the country. Let us explore the background of the Wars of the Roses, the key figures involved in the Battle of Bosworth, the events of the battle itself, and its aftermath, shedding light on why this battle remains a pivotal moment in English history. Background: the Wars of the Roses. The Wars of the Roses were a series of dynastic conflicts that took place between 1455 and 1487, involving two rival branches of the royal House of Plantagenet, the House of Lancaster, represented by a red rose, and the House of York, symbolized by a white rose. These wars were driven by deep-seated rivalries within the English nobility, compounded by weak leadership and economic challenges. The root of the conflict can be traced back to the reign of King Edward III, whose numerous sons founded competing branches of the royal family, each vying for control of the throne. The initial cause of the wars was the perceived illegitimacy of the Lancastrian rule under Henry VI, a king plagued by bouts of mental illness and an inability to effectively govern the country. His ineffectiveness created a power vacuum, which Richard, Duke of York, sought to fill. Richard's claim to the throne was based on his descent from Edward III through both his parents, making him a formidable contender for the crown. His challenge to Henry VI's authority led to the outbreak of open conflict, starting with the First Battle of St. Albans in 1455. The wars saw several key battles, including the Battle of Towton in 1461, which was one of the bloodiest battles fought on English soil. Towton resulted in a decisive victory for the Yorkists, and Edward IV, Richard of York's son, ascended to the throne, bringing a temporary period of stability. However, this peace was short-lived, as internal dissent and external pressures continued to destabilize the kingdom. The death of Edward IV in 1483 reignited the conflict, particularly after his brother, Richard III, seized the throne under controversial circumstances. Richard III's rise to power was marred by the mystery surrounding the disappearance of his nephews, Edward V and Richard, Duke of York, who were imprisoned in the Tower of London and never seen again. This incident, known as the Mystery of the Princes in the Tower, cast a dark shadow over Richard's reign, leading to widespread suspicion and discontent among the nobility. It was against this backdrop of political intrigue and instability that Henry Tudor, a relatively obscure claimant to the throne with Lancastrian ties, decided to challenge Richard III's rule. Henry Tudor's claim to the throne was tenuous, based on his descent from John of Gaunt, the third son of Edward III, through an illegitimate line that had been legitimized by Parliament. Despite his weak claim, Henry was able to garner significant support from key nobles who were dissatisfied with Richard's rule, as well as financial and military backing from the French king. Henry's campaign to claim the throne culminated in the Battle of Bosworth, where the fate of the English crown would be decided. Key figures in the Battle of Bosworth. The Battle of Bosworth was not just a military engagement but a clash of personalities, each driven by ambition, loyalty, and the pursuit of power. The key figures involved in the battle played crucial roles in determining its outcome, and their actions have been immortalized in history. Richard III, the last king from the House of York, was a seasoned military leader and a skilled administrator. He had ascended to the throne in 1483 after the death of his brother, Edward IV, under circumstances that were widely regarded as dubious. Richard's reign was marked by his efforts to consolidate power and secure his position as king, but his reputation was tainted by the disappearance of the princes in the Tower, who were widely believed to have been murdered on his orders. Despite his controversial rise to power, Richard was a capable ruler with a strong following in the north of England, where he had established a power base during his brother's reign. Richard's forces at Bosworth were composed of loyal northern soldiers and mercenaries, estimated to number between 10,000 and 15,000 men. His army was well equipped and experienced, and Richard himself was prepared to lead his troops into battle. His strategy was straightforward. He sought to overwhelm Henry Tudor's smaller and less experienced force with a direct assault, hoping to crush the rebellion before it could gain momentum. Henry Tudor, in contrast, was an outsider with a tenuous claim to the throne, having spent much of his life in exile in Brittany and France. Despite his lack of experience and his relatively small force of between 5,000 and 8,000 men, Henry was able to attract the support of several disaffected nobles and foreign allies, who saw in him a chance to restore the Lancastrian line to the throne. Henry's forces were a mix of loyal Welsh supporters, French mercenaries, and English nobles who had defected from Richard's cause. Henry's key ally was Lord Stanley, also known as Thomas Stanley, who was Henry's stepfather. Stanley's role in the battle was pivotal, as he commanded a force of around 6,000 men that could tip the balance in favor of either side. Throughout the conflict, Stanley had maintained a cautious neutrality, waiting to see which side would offer him the best advantage. His decision to support Henry at the crucial moment of the battle would prove decisive in determining the outcome. Other notable figures included John de Vere, Earl of Oxford, who was one of Henry's most trusted commanders. De Vere had been a loyal Lancastrian throughout the Wars of the Roses and had played a key role in organizing Henry's forces for the battle. His tactical acumen was instrumental in securing the victory. On Richard's side, the Duke of Norfolk was one of the king's most loyal supporters and commanded a significant portion of the royal forces. His death during the battle symbolized the collapse of Richard's cause. Each of these figures brought their own motivations, strengths, and weaknesses to the battlefield. Their actions, decisions, and betrayals were not just military maneuvers but were deeply rooted in the complex web of loyalties and enmities that characterized the Wars of the Roses. Their roles in the Battle of Bosworth would determine the fate of the English crown and the future of the kingdom. The Battle of Bosworth, Events and Strategies. The Battle of Bosworth took place on the morning of August 22, 1485, near Market Bosworth in Leicestershire. It was a decisive engagement that saw the forces of Richard III, the last king from the House of York, pitted against those of Henry Tudor, a claimant to the throne with Lancastrian ties. The battle was fought on a site that would become one of the most famous battlefields in English history, with both sides vying for control of the kingdom. Richard III commanded an army that was numerically superior to Henry's, with estimates suggesting that Richard's forces numbered between 10,000 and 15,000 men. His troops were primarily composed of northern soldiers, who were fiercely loyal to the king, as well as mercenaries hired to bolster his ranks. Richard's forces were well-equipped and experienced, reflecting his own background as a military leader who had fought in several key battles during the Wars of the Roses. Richard's strategy for the battle was based on his belief that a direct assault on Henry's forces would lead to a quick and decisive victory. He positioned his troops on Ambion Hill, a strong defensive position that gave his army the advantage of higher ground. From this vantage point, Richard intended to launch an overwhelming attack on Henry's smaller and less experienced force, crushing the rebellion before it could gain momentum. Henry Tudor's army, by contrast, was significantly smaller, with estimates ranging from 5,000 to 8,000 men. His forces were a mix of loyal Welsh supporters, French mercenaries, and English nobles who had defected from Richard's cause. Henry's strategy, developed with the advice of his commanders like the Earl of Oxford, was more cautious. Aware of his numerical disadvantage, Henry relied on the possibility of defections from Richard's camp and the strategic importance of Lord Stanley's forces, which had yet to declare for either side. As the battle commenced, Richard ordered his forces to descend from Ambion Hill and engage Henry's troops on the plain below. The initial clashes were fierce, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Richard's forces began to gain the upper hand due to their superior numbers and the effectiveness of their archers and cavalry. However, the battle's turning point came when Richard, in a bold move, decided to target Henry Tudor directly. Seeing Henry somewhat isolated with his personal guard, Richard led a charge across the battlefield, hoping to kill Henry and end the battle in one decisive blow. This move was both courageous and risky, showcasing Richard's willingness to personally lead his troops and his belief that the battle could be won by sheer force of will. As Richard's charge neared Henry's position, Lord Stanley made his crucial decision. Until this moment, Stanley and his men had remained on the sidelines, observing the battle. Stanley's loyalty had been uncertain throughout the conflict, as he had ties to both Richard and Henry. However, seeing the opportunity to decisively influence the outcome, Stanley's forces joined the battle on Henry's side, attacking Richard's flanks. This intervention was devastating for Richard's troops, who were caught off guard and quickly overwhelmed. The battle turned into a rout as Richard's forces began to collapse under the combined assault of Henry's army and Stanley's fresh troops. Richard, refusing to flee, continued to fight valiantly, even as his men deserted him. According to contemporary accounts, Richard fought bravely until he was surrounded and killed, becoming the last English king to die in battle. His death marked the end of the Plantagenet dynasty and the beginning of the Tudor era. Henry's victory at Bosworth was not just a result of superior strategy but also of Richard's miscalculations and the timely betrayal by Stanley. The battle demonstrated the volatile nature of loyalty during the Wars of the Roses and how quickly fortunes could change on the battlefield. Henry Tudor's ability to capitalize on these dynamics, combined with his strategic patience, ultimately secured his claim to the throne. Aftermath and consequences. The immediate aftermath of the Battle of Bosworth was marked by the swift coronation of Henry Tudor as Henry VII, solidifying his claim to the English throne. Richard III's death on the battlefield symbolized the end of the Plantagenet dynasty, which had ruled England for over 3 centuries. With Richard's death, the Wars of the Roses effectively came to an end, though minor uprisings and challenges to Henry's rule would continue for a few more years. Henry's first significant act as king was to marry Elizabeth of York, the daughter of Edward IV, thereby uniting the warring houses of Lancaster and York. This marriage was a strategic move designed to legitimize his reign and reconcile the factions that had been at war for decades. The union of the Red Rose of Lancaster and the White Rose of York in the Tudor Rose became a powerful symbol of this reconciliation and the new era of peace and stability that Henry sought to establish. Henry VII's reign marked the beginning of the Tudor dynasty, which would rule England for over a century. His government was characterized by efforts to centralize power and strengthen the monarchy, reducing the influence of the nobility, whose shifting loyalties had caused so much turmoil during the Wars of the Roses. Henry's policies laid the foundation for a more modern state, with a stronger central government and more effective taxation and legal systems. The consequences of the Battle of Bosworth also extended to the broader social and political landscape of England. The end of the wars allowed for a period of relative peace, which enabled economic recovery and the growth of trade. The Tudor dynasty would later oversee significant cultural and religious transformations, particularly during the reigns of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. In the long term, the Battle of Bosworth has been remembered as a defining moment in English history, representing the end of the medieval period and the beginning of the Renaissance in England. The battle and its aftermath marked a transition in governance and society, setting the stage for the emergence of England as a major European power in the centuries to come. Historiographical perspectives. The Battle of Bosworth has been the subject of extensive study and debate among historians, with interpretations evolving over time. Initially, the battle was celebrated by Tudor historians as a moment of divine providence, where the just and rightful Henry VII overthrew the tyrannical Richard III. This narrative was reinforced by popular works like Shakespeare's Richard III, which portrayed Richard as a villainous character deserving of his fate. This portrayal has had a lasting impact on how the battle and Richard's reign are perceived in popular culture. However, modern historians have re-evaluated these accounts, offering more nuanced interpretations of Richard III and the battle itself. Some scholars argue that Richard was not the monstrous figure depicted by Tudor propagandists, but rather a capable ruler whose reputation was unjustly tarnished. This reassessment has led to a more sympathetic view of Richard, highlighting his administrative reforms and his loyalty to the northern nobility. The battle itself has also been the focus of military historians who have analyzed the tactics, logistics, and decision-making processes of both sides. The role of Lord Stanley and the importance of strategic alliances have been emphasized in recent studies, showing how the outcome of the battle was far from predetermined and hinged on the complex interplay of personal ambitions and loyalties. In recent years, the discovery of Richard III's remains in 2012 and subsequent archaeological studies have provided new insights into the battle and its participants, sparking renewed public interest in this historical event. These discoveries have led to fresh debates about Richard's legacy and the true nature of the conflict that culminated at Bosworth. Overall, the historiography of the Battle of Bosworth reflects the broader complexities of interpreting historical events, where the line between fact and legend is often blurred by the passage of time and the agendas of those recording history. The Battle of Bosworth stands as one of the most significant turning points in English history. It marked the end of the Wars of the Roses, a conflict that had torn the nation apart for decades, and brought about the rise of the Tudor dynasty, which would go on to shape the future of England and its monarchy. The battle not only decided the fate of the English throne but also symbolized the end of the medieval era and the beginning of a new period of centralized power and national consolidation. The figures who fought at Bosworth, particularly Richard III and Henry Tudor, have been immortalized in history, literature, and popular culture, each representing different facets of leadership, ambition, and the quest for power. The battle's legacy continues to be a subject of fascination and debate, reflecting the enduring impact of this historical event on the collective memory of England. In conclusion, the Battle of Bosworth was more than just a military engagement. It was a decisive moment that reshaped the political landscape of England and set the stage for the modern nation-state. Its legacy, both in terms of immediate consequences and long-term historical significance, underscores its place as a key event in the annals of English history. Thanks for listening. Like and comment. And please subscribe, as that will help us get more videos out to those interested in the Middle Ages. See you next time on Medieval Chronicles 1066. Stay curious. The birth of Henry VII, a turning point in English history. Introduction. Henry VII, born on January 28, 1457, at Pembroke Castle in Wales, is one of the most pivotal figures in English history. His birth marked the beginning of a journey fraught with challenges and adversity, ultimately leading to the end of the Wars of the Roses and the establishment of the Tudor dynasty. Let's explore the intricate circumstances surrounding his birth, the trials and tribulations of his early life, and the profound impact he would later have on England and its monarchy. By examining these aspects in greater detail, we uncover the significance of his life and legacy. The context of Henry's birth. Henry VII's birth took place during one of the most tumultuous periods in English history. The Wars of the Roses, a series of dynastic conflicts between the houses of Lancaster and York, were raging across the kingdom. These battles were not just a clash of armies, but a prolonged struggle for power and legitimacy that deeply divided the nobility and left the country in disarray. This chaotic backdrop set the stage for Henry's challenging rise to power, making his birth a beacon of hope for the Lancastrian cause. The backgrounds of Henry VII's parents. Henry VII's lineage and family connections were instrumental in shaping his claim to the throne and the alliances that supported his rise. His mother, Lady Margaret Beaufort, came from one of the most prominent noble families in England. A direct descendant of John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, Margaret's lineage tied her to the royal family through the legitimized Beaufort line. Despite questions surrounding the legitimacy of the Beaufort claim, Margaret's ancestry provided a strong Lancastrian connection, making her a key figure in the power struggles of the era. Margaret's early life was marked by precocious maturity and political acumen. She was married at a very young age, as was customary among noble families seeking to secure alliances. Her union with Edmund Tudor, Earl of Richmond, was strategically significant. Edmund, born to Owen Tudor and Queen Catherine of Valois, the widow of King Henry V, brought a unique blend of royal and Welsh heritage to the Tudor lineage. The marriage symbolized the merging of Lancastrian and Tudor ambitions, solidifying their position in the fractious political landscape. Edmund Tudor, Henry's father, was a key figure in the Lancastrian cause. As the half-brother of King Henry VI, Edmund held a position of significant influence within the Lancastrian court. His Welsh ancestry and connection to the Tudor family added a distinct cultural and political dimension to his role. The Tudors traced their lineage back to Ednyfft Fychan, a prominent 13th-century Welsh statesman, and they maintained strong ties to the Welsh nobility. These connections would later prove invaluable in rallying support for Henry's claim to the throne. Tragically, Edmund Tudor's life was cut short when he was captured and imprisoned by Yorkist forces. He died of the plague in November 1456, leaving Margaret widowed and pregnant with Henry. Despite this devastating loss, Margaret's resilience and determination ensured that her son would survive and thrive. She sought refuge under the protection of Jasper Tudor, Edmund's brother, who became a steadfast guardian and mentor to young Henry. Criticism of Henry VII's bloodline. One of the criticisms often levied against Henry VII was the lack of a more direct and uncontested royal bloodline. While his mother, Margaret Beaufort, was a descendant of John of Gaunt, her lineage came through the legitimized Beaufort line, which some viewed as a weaker claim to the throne. This branch of the family, though legitimized by royal decree, carried the stigma of being originally born out of wedlock, leading to questions about the validity of its connection to the royal bloodline. Critics argued that this tenuous link made Henry's claim less credible than those of the Yorkist contenders. Similarly, his paternal lineage through Edmund Tudor, while noble and tied to the Lancastrian cause, was not directly royal. Edmund's father, Owen Tudor, was a Welsh courtier whose marriage to Queen Catherine of Valois was a source of contention. Though the union brought prestige, it did not carry the direct royal authority needed to strengthen Henry's claim. As a result, Henry's ascent to the throne relied more on his political acumen, military success, and the support of key allies rather than an unassailable hereditary right. This perceived deficiency in Henry's royal bloodline became a focal point for Yorkist opposition and propaganda. The Yorkists often portrayed him as a usurper whose claim to the throne was based more on circumstance than on birthright. Richard III, the Yorkist king whom Henry defeated at Bosworth, was seen by his supporters as having a more legitimate claim through his descent from the senior Plantagenet line. Henry's victory, therefore, was not just a military triumph but also a challenge to the deeply entrenched notions of hereditary legitimacy. Despite these criticisms, Henry VII's reign demonstrated that effective governance and stability could outweigh concerns about bloodline. By marrying Elizabeth of York, he united the warring houses of Lancaster and York, creating a new legacy that blended the claims of both factions. This strategic alliance not only silenced many critics but also established a dynasty that would rule England for over a century. Henry's ability to consolidate power and gain the loyalty of key factions proved that leadership and strategy could overcome the limitations of lineage. The political landscape of 15th century England. The mid-15th century was marked by profound political instability and shifting allegiances. The Yorkist King Edward IV had seized the throne, displacing the Lancastrian King Henry VI. This dramatic shift in power had far-reaching consequences, creating a climate of uncertainty and danger for those loyal to the Lancastrian cause. The struggle for dominance between these two houses left the kingdom fractured and vulnerable to external threats, with power constantly shifting between factions. Henry's early years were spent under the protection of his uncle, Jasper Tudor, a staunch Lancastrian who ensured his nephew's safety amid the volatile political climate. Recognizing the danger Henry faced as a Lancastrian heir, Jasper took him to Brittany, where they lived under the protection of Duke Francis II. This period of exile, though challenging, was formative for Henry, shaping his character and instilling in him the resilience and strategic thinking that would define his reign. It was during this time that Henry developed the diplomatic acumen and patience that would later become hallmarks of his kingship. During his time in Brittany, Henry learned valuable lessons in diplomacy and survival. The political maneuvers he observed and experienced firsthand would later inform his approach to governance and alliances. This experience of displacement and exile gave him a deep understanding of the precarious nature of power and the importance of securing loyalty through calculated actions. His ability to adapt to challenging circumstances and form alliances was critical in his eventual rise to power. Henry's path to the throne. As Henry grew older, his claim to the throne became increasingly significant. The deaths of key Lancastrian figures, including Henry VI and his son Edward of Westminster, left Henry as the primary Lancastrian claimant. This position, while elevating his status, also placed him in great peril. The Yorkist regime viewed him as a threat to their dominance, making his survival a constant struggle. Henry's ability to navigate these treacherous waters and maintain his claim is a testament to his resilience and political skill. The turning point came in 1485 when Henry, supported by French forces and loyal Lancastrian allies, returned to England to challenge the Yorkist King Richard III. The Battle of Bosworth Field on August 22, 1485, proved decisive. Henry's forces triumphed, and Richard III was killed, marking the end of the Wars of the Roses. Henry's victory was not just a military achievement but a symbol of hope for a fractured kingdom. His success at Bosworth demonstrated his ability to inspire loyalty and lead effectively, even under immense pressure. Henry's ascension to the throne marked the beginning of the Tudor dynasty, a period characterized by relative stability and significant cultural and political advancements. His ability to navigate the complex political landscape and secure his position as king demonstrated his remarkable leadership skills. His early struggles and eventual triumph created a narrative of perseverance and determination that endeared him to his supporters. Henry's rise to power also represented a turning point for England, ushering in an era of unity and progress. The significance of Henry VII's reign. Henry VII's reign was transformative for England. He faced the daunting task of restoring stability to a kingdom that had been ravaged by decades of civil war. Through a combination of strategic marriages, financial reforms, and the establishment of a strong central government, Henry laid the foundation for the Tudor dynasty's enduring success. His reign became synonymous with a period of recovery and renewal, characterized by a focus on unity and growth. One of Henry's most significant achievements was his marriage to Elizabeth of York. This union symbolized the reconciliation of the warring houses of Lancaster and York, bringing an end to the Wars of the Roses and ushering in a new era of unity. The marriage also solidified Henry's claim to the throne, strengthening his legitimacy and ensuring the continuity of his dynasty. Their children represented the unification of previously divided factions, a powerful symbol of the new era. This strategic alliance not only brought peace to the realm but also set a precedent for future dynastic marriages. Economically, Henry implemented policies aimed at reducing the power of the nobility and promoting trade. The establishment of the Court of Star Chamber allowed him to enforce justice and curb the influence of powerful noble families. These measures, combined with his focus on fiscal responsibility, helped to stabilize the kingdom and create a foundation for prosperity. His financial prudence ensured that the monarchy was less reliant on the nobility for support, further consolidating his power. Henry's economic policies laid the groundwork for the flourishing of commerce and industry during the Tudor era. Henry's reign also saw the beginning of the English Renaissance, a period of cultural and intellectual flourishing. He encouraged exploration and trade, paving the way for England's emergence as a global power in the centuries to come. His careful governance and emphasis on stability and growth left an indelible mark on the kingdom. The patronage of the arts and the promotion of learning during his reign set the stage for future cultural achievements. Henry's vision extended beyond his immediate reign, ensuring that his legacy would influence generations to come. Legacy of Henry VII. Henry VII's legacy is profound and far-reaching. He not only ended a period of political instability but also established a dynasty that would rule England for over a century. His reign marked the beginning of the Tudor era, a time of significant cultural, political, and economic transformation. The policies and reforms he introduced had a lasting impact on the structure and governance of England, shaping its future trajectory. Henry's ability to navigate the challenges of his time and implement lasting reforms ensured the success of his dynasty. His marriage to Elizabeth of York and his efforts to consolidate power and restore stability set the stage for the reigns of his successors, including his son Henry VIII and his granddaughter Elizabeth I. The foundation he laid enabled them to build on his achievements and steer England through transformative periods in its history. His vision and leadership provided a blueprint for effective monarchy, blending pragmatism with ambition. Henry VII's impact extended beyond his own reign. His policies and reforms laid the groundwork for the development of a strong and centralized monarchy, shaping the future of England. His emphasis on fiscal responsibility, justice, and governance continues to be studied as a model of effective leadership. The legacy of his reign serves as a reminder of the importance of resilience and strategic foresight in leadership. Henry's contributions to England's governance, economy, and culture established him as a transformative figure whose influence endured long after his death. Conclusion. The birth of Henry VII in 1457 was a turning point in English history. Despite the challenges he faced as a child, Henry rose to become one of England's most significant monarchs. His reign brought an end to the Wars of the Roses, established the Tudor dynasty, and set the stage for a period of prosperity and cultural flourishing. Henry's life and legacy are a testament to resilience, strategic thinking, and effective leadership, ensuring his place as a transformative figure in the annals of English history. The story of his life continues to inspire and captivate, reflecting the enduring significance of his contributions to the nation. By uniting a fractured kingdom and laying the groundwork for future prosperity, Henry VII's legacy remains one of the most enduring in English history. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe to Medieval Chronicles 1066 for more journeys back to the Middle Ages. Stay curious.